So my name is Brittany King. You can call me BK. My pronouns are she, her, and King. King is my last name. I love to model using last names or names when you can when using pronouns. If you are not familiar with folks' pronouns, their names will be perfectly fine. So you can call me BK or you can call me King. That's what it is. I'm joined today by the lovely and talented Miss Melissa Park. And
Hi.
And we will be presenting to you all today her Afrocentric social emotional learning practices. Just want to give you a small note that today's session is being recorded. So if you're not comfortable with being recorded, please let us know, and you're totally okay to stay off camera if that is what feels comfortable for you. So before we really get into it, just want to go over some housekeeping. Melissa, you want to go over the housekeeping for us really quickly?
Yeah, so we have some virtual handouts that will help you through the process of going through the Afrocentric social emotional framework. So we have terms and definitions. There are some words that we use like Black and Pan-Africanism that we use that some folks may or may not or be familiar with or use in different terms. So we want to make sure we have that. We also have one of the handouts for one of the activities that we're going to be doing today. And I think that's it. Am I missing something, PK?
No, I think you got it. I think you got it. And I'll make sure to share that with folks towards the end of the workshop. So just look out for that as we continue to move through today's workshop.
Cool. We also have accommodations. We are going to be having some videos being shown today. So we're going to make sure and have the closed captioning. If there are any problems, please let either me or BK know. You can put it in the chat. Another thing that we added is additional 20 minutes. We realized that it's very rich what we're talking about. What we're talking about is super important. And we want to leave room for people to put in the chat, to have a little bit of discussion. We're also going to be available after the workshop in order for to answer some questions about Black Teaching Artist Lab, about Afrocentric social emotional learning. And another aspect is using the chat. This is an overview of the Afrocentric social emotional learning. There's not going to be a ton of discussion, but we do want to have your input, see what your thoughts are, and utilize that tool. So please use that.
Also, last thing I want to say as far as using the chat, this will be an interactive workshop. So there will be things that we'll be asking you all to read, respond to. So, please lean into that, where most of us here are educators. Most of us know how it feels to, have folks in a Zoom space. So, please be mindful and, step up to the plate if you feel inclined to.
Awesome.
All right, let's move on forward. So, going to give you all just a brief overview of how today's agenda is going to work. This is our flow. So right now we're in introductions. We're going to go over, we're going to introduce ourselves to you all so you kind of have a feel for where we're coming from as far as our teaching practices. Then we're going to go over how we're going to utilize this space. It's going to be a brave space in lieu of utilizing a safe space. And we'll break that down a little bit more. Then we'll get into the meat and potatoes, which is introducing our Afrocentric social emotional learning competencies. We'll go through all 5 of those, kind of go into those core competencies in practice. And then we'll have a closing discussion, and then leave you all with a ton of resources that will help you actualize these core competencies in your teaching practice. Are there any questions about that? And you can feel free to go off mute or just raise your hand, give us a thumbs up if you're cool, and we'll move right along. All right, Melissa. Please tell folks about the Black.
If we could all be on mute, that'd be stellar. Awesome. Go on mute. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, I had muted you by accident. My bad.
No worries. Great. So Black Teaching Artist Lab aims to connect individuals and students from the Pan-African diaspora through arts education in order to unify and strengthen intercultural understandings between marginalized Pan-African populations. We believe that through the use of art, one of the most powerful tools we have for human expression, Pan-African artists will be able to share their individual stories of their lived Black experience with Black students everywhere. We also didn't mention this in the slide, but we have 3 pillars, which is self, culture, and community. Self really focuses on the Afrocentric social emotional framework. Culture really focuses on the travel aspect, which is something I'll be talking about later on in the session. And community is talking more about how do I become a better global citizen in my community. So that's kind of the nutshell of what Black Teaching Artist Lab is, which is something I founded too. So I should also mention that. Important note. You flip through the next slide. And that is me when I put makeup on. Clearly, you know, obviously I'm in COVID wear. I am the founder of Black Teaching Artist Lab. We are in our first month of being an LLC, which is exciting. I also am the creator of the Afrocentric Social Emotional Learning Framework and the creator of the Pan-African Cultural Exchange Program. And I love music. I think that's the reason why I really got into this is my love for Dave Matthews and Fish and, you know, all those good jam bands. Please tell me anyone who's in the chat right now who loves any sort of music, let me know, especially underground music, hieroglyphics and the Far Side, all of that is what I love. So that's just kind of just me. I just love music and culture and this program. What? You got to rap? Wait,
okay. You, Alyssa? Okay. I would love to talk to you about that because the Far Side is one of my favorite hip hop groups. They're actually the first hip hop group I got into when I was like breaking out of the pop boy band era of life.
We've all been there. We've all been there.
We went through it. And as we move along, tell you a little bit about myself. As I said, my name is Brittany. You can call me BK. My pronouns are she, her. I also use King because it is my last name, and I love to foster folks either saying names or pronouns when addressing each other because you know we want to be inclusive of how we all want to be called and express ourselves. I am based here in Miami, Florida. Grew up here in South Florida. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, moved to Miami after exploring different variants of college. I'm a poet, I'm a theater maker, I'm also a novice photographer, and I love music and everything art. Also, I love undomesticated cats. That means cats in the wild. They're gorgeous, and I feel like, you know, we should keep them wild and let them roam free as they are. And also love warm beach nights because I'm a beach bum. Like I grew up down here next to the beach, and once I went off to college, I realized that I could not live next to the beach because I need that salt in my air. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. And as we continue to go through the workshop, you'll learn a little bit about myself and also a little bit more about Melissa as we walk you through these Afrocentric learning styles. So before we get into that, I just want to address our mindfulness and how we're creating a brave space in today's workshop. So we are all here today in order to create brave spaces for sharing our lived experiences. It's really important that we respect, honor, and appreciate the multitudes of experiences and opinions that we encounter, not only today, but in our teaching practices, as these differences accelerate our collective healing and growth as a learning community and as a lifelong learning community, right? So we really would love to ask everyone that they participate fully and presently in today's discussions with deep listening and mindful speech. I also just want to point out that, you know, deep listening is a form of communicating. I like to think that listening is a form of speaking as well, because when you're listening and actually deeply listening, you're doing it in such a way that, you know, you're really accessing, you know, what's being presented to you, and mindful speech, like really be mindful of how we're presenting in today's workshop. You know, some of us aren't Black or brown people, so a lot of this will not really directly connect to your lived experience, but we do want to be mindful of how, especially for those of us who are not Black or brown, and have Black or brown students in their classrooms, how you will be mindful as you approach these competencies that we're going to present to you today. Also, just want to note, you do have the luxury and the agency to take short breaks as you feel you need. So come back to the workshop feeling refreshed and ready to engage in these practices with us. Feel free to communicate in the chat when you're doing that, so we know who's in the space with us and who isn't. Anything else to add to that, Melissa?
No, you did a fabulous job, BK.
No
Bravo to you. I am.
Awesome. All right, so let's move right along.
Awesome sauce. Okay, now it's time for Afrocentric social emotional learning. So what is it? It is a pedagogical framework that seeks to be the individual and cultural identities of our Black learners through arts education practices. The framework focuses on recentering the Black child in their own culture, social surroundings, and education. In education, we must first start with Africa and center the rest center our learning around it. Yes. We hope that by developing the Afrocentric SEL competencies for our Black learners, we can equip them to flourish as interconnected human beings who are deeply rooted in a strong and complete sense of self. I also want to note one thing, that even though we are using it through art and we're using it through the lens of the Black experience, this could be used for, you know, the Asian experience, or for, you know, any sort of lens, and we're just using it through art, and you can use it through science or math. This is just our perspective, and this is just how we are looking at how we could better understand our Black learners. So just a quick note. I think you could go in the next slide. This is a clip from one important thing about this framework is talking about what Afrocentricity is. Essentially, it is the theory of how to recenter African people so we can see ourselves as the subjects of our historical narrative. And this is a clip from Dr. Asante. He actually did our very first lecture for Black Teaching Artists Lab for Black History Month. So it was incredible to have someone who is a great figure in Afrocentricity to kind of bless us with his knowledge. So this is just a quick 30 seconds of what he says. Let's take a listen.
Centricity is the theory of how do you actually recenter African people so that we see ourselves as subjects of our historical narrative, not on the margins of Europe, but we are right in the center of our own consideration of abstract ideas, our consideration of what it means to be just, social justice, cultural justice, critical thinking. We have ideas about these things. The difference between the rich and the poor. We have thought of this. Everything and anything that other people have thought of in the world, Africans have thought of, and thought of it first. We built the pyramids. We created geometry to build it, because you can't build pyramids without geometry. We were the ones to study the human anatomy. There is no human anatomy without understanding what we did with mummification. The mummification of the bodies of Africans in the Nile Valley was the very source of science, the very beginning of it. We were the ones who slept on top of our houses and looked up at the sky at night and saw the stars and counted them and named them. We did that. We had to do it because there were no clouds in the sky in the Nile Valley. I've been to Egypt about 15 times.
Yeah, so that's just one clip for Dr. Asante and his influence on the Afrocentric social emotional competency. So for social emotional learning, there's 5 competencies: the Afrocentric self-awareness, Afrocentric self-management, Afrocentric social awareness, Afrocentric relationship skills, and Afrocentric responsible decision making. So the first competency is Afrocentric self-awareness. And the definition of that is the ability to understand one's own emotions, thoughts, values, and identity, how these elements can influence how behavior across contexts, and how one is ultimately perceived by society because of the person's own skin color. And then the next slide shows us 3 examples of when our students, because I think you need to click again so we can see school. Like click the, yeah, perfect. So there's 3 major examples that we see our Black students having their color being perceived as negative. So it's school, media, and society. You could put in the chat if you could think of other examples of when this happens. So school. So Black students face excessive home. That's a good one. Black students face excessive suspensions, under referrals to gifted education, excessive policing of Black bodies from head to toe as early as preschool, white educators who harbor blatant or explicit negative expectations of Black students, student media, the adultification and dehumanization of, of our Black children from preschool through high school, right? And I saw a really good example of the textbooks, right? Rewriting history from other students. That's a really good one. And an example I put in here, museum. Wow, you guys are great. Museums. Geez, this is a great crowd. Awesome. And a really great organization that's doing, school is doing really great work in this, is the Center Blacken out in Philly. And they're doing really good training for their Black educators and how to train and how to talk and how to better facilitate for their their students out there. So the next one is media. Black people face lack of dignified representation in media. When you see a Black person in the media, what do you think? When you see a Black woman in the media, what do you think? We have a very, very strong stereotypes of what being Black in the media is. Poor portrayals of their race, social media, race in film, often leading to negative stereotypes, Eurocentric ideals of beauty, damaging the self-esteem of Black people, right? TikTok, which is true, social media, being in different alternative spaces, magazines. These are excellent examples. And I really appreciate everyone putting in YouTube. Yeah, these are all true and all important. Oh, this is awesome. What's the next slide? And society. Black people face lack of representation in the media and workplace, negative stereotypes leading to negative consequences, feeling of discomfort in white dominant spaces, microaggressions, and discrimination, right? So these are just 3 examples, along with what you've said in the chat, that our Black learners face when, being more aware of their Black identity or Black their self. So as art educators, how do we acknowledge that? How do we better equip our learners to, face these issues? So BK, why don't you lead us on that? How do we do this?
Yeah, let me help you answer that question. So when we think about how to break down Afrocentric self-awareness using art practices, we can think of really a multitude of different ways. But what we're gonna break down today, we're gonna be looking at specific art practices. Today we're gonna look at dance. For the first few. So we know that dance practices can help our Black learners understand aspects of their own personalities, be it their individual emotions, their thoughts, what they value, and how they behave with each other. Through that, they can also discover different aspects of their Black identity that maybe they don't see when they're looking through their textbooks or trying to understand through like the Eurocentric views of different artists and artwork that we typically are engaged with in school setting. So rehearsing traditional West African dances, for example, can encourage Black learners to use their bodies in order to convey internal emotions or ideas, right? So over time, while our learners are exploring these practices and processes, we are hoping that they develop these Afrocentric SEL competencies for our Black learners so that they may go on to flourish as interconnected human beings who are deeply rooted in a strong and complete sense of their selves. So the first example that I'm going to show you all is an example from two brilliant Afro French dancers. They are Les Twins. You may know them if you follow Beyonce and are a Hive member like myself. This clip has been circulating around Instagram for a little while, and I think it's a really perfect example of the merging of dance to understand, you know, how we can express different forms of music, how we can express our anxiety or our own emotions and our identity when thinking about Afrocentric self-awareness, right? So the emotions that we feel when we as Black and brown folks are bogged down by the limits of society and how we're treated just because of the color of our skin or because our cultural backgrounds, right? So I'm gonna show a little bit of this clip. I'm gonna try to not show the whole thing. I love this clip, but I'm gonna show just a little bit of it so you guys get a sense of what we're kind of breaking down here when we say that dance can be used in this way.
Soldier on, still battling the ghost, no. Oh, oh. Still struggling to see the sign, too heavy for a heart like say, say. Heritage to keep me clean, keep the devil watching over me. Save me, save me. Last stand before I walk away, spellbound, I'll stutter, I'll pray, release me, save me.
All right, y'all. I really love that. I was about to just, you know, just stay there with you, but you get a good gist of, you know, how that can be connected to Afrocentric self-awareness. Just in that clip alone, we can see, you know, they're expressing the angst that Quabs is talking about in that song, right? So, you know, that's just a little bit of a taste of, you know, from a Pan-Africanist view of how, you know, we can actualize Afrocentric self-awareness in practice. So there are some things we want to think about when approaching having our young artists and learners understand self-awareness in practice. So just want to have you all think about these guiding questions. So how do you understand your individual identity, or how do I understand my individual identity as well as my Black identity through my art practices? And then how can I begin as a teaching artist to imagine these practices to design an activity for my Black learners? So these are just a few things you can think about when approaching Afrocentric self-awareness in practice through art, through your art teaching practice. Cool. Yes, and it was Quab. You got it. Quabs, actually, yeah. All right, so I'm gonna throw it back to Melissa so she can break down our next competency, which is Afrocentric self-care.
Thank you, BK. That was great. That was really fun. So Afrocentric self-management and self-care. I just want to also note that any folks that do SEL work know that self-management is the term that is used when we're talking about this competency, but we felt that the word management felt too much of, it's like policing someone's emotions too much. So we're transferring the word management into self-care, right? It's the ability to successfully regulate one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in different situations when exposed to the experience of being Black. Black learners become aware of their emotions associated with the Black experience and their Black identity. These emotions can include confusion, hopelessness, anxiety, depression, and anger. What's the next slide? So there are certain feelings that are associated with being Black, right? So I just put some examples up. Before going into that, I just want to also note that racial trauma and discrimination can be symptoms that mirror those of post-traumatic stress disorder. So I just want to note that for anyone who is an art educator who aren't familiar with that and do work with Black learners. So some like experience like stop and frisk, some feelings associated with that is being scared, frightened, and disrespected. Adultification of your body. You could feel lack of control, lack of understanding oneself in relationships to others. Stereotypes, feeling confused or upset, displaced, or a sense of double consciousness, or a lack of representation, feeling left out, dislocated, or dislocation of self. So as art educators, how we are having Black students experiencing this, how do we do this? How do we compensate? How do we create art? So BK, let us enlighten us.
Yeah. So there are many ways that we can create art around Afrocentric self-care and helping our Black learners be able to process those emotions. One way that I find as a really useful way, that I'm gonna explain here, because there are many useful ways that I think we can break this down using art. But the way that I'm gonna present it to you all today is by utilizing poetry. So Black learners can examine works by Black authors, such as Claude McKay's Outcast, and reflect on what emotions he was experiencing and working to release through that text. Poetry, works of poetry and literature can act as resources for Black learners to call on when they're experiencing these difficult emotions, and when they're simply looking to further develop their own art practices. So if they are writers, if they are poets, if they are theater makers, having them, explore these texts in order to kind of understand how to break that down is a really useful way to access Afrocentric self-care in our teaching practices. So would anyone be willing to read Claude McKay's Outcast for us? Raise your hand or, signal us in the chat. Not all at once.
I can do it.
All right. Who is that? Say your name, please.
Manon.
All right.
Manon Joyce.
Take it away.
I love poetry, so thanks.
Thank you.
For the dim regions whence my fathers came, my spirit, bondaged by the body, longs. Words felt but never heard, my lips would frame. My soul would sing forgotten jungle songs. I would go back to darkness and to peace. But the great Western world holds me in fee, and I may never hope for full release, while to its alien gods I bend my knee. Something in me is lost, forever lost. Some vital thing has gone out of my heart, and I must walk the way of life, a ghost, among the sons of earth, a thing apart. For I was born far from my native clime, under the white man's menace, out of time.
Yes, thank you so much for reading that. Such a powerful piece, still very resonant to this day. Shout out to the elder, Claude McKay. So, as we are exploring how to use Afrocentric self-care in practice, we can use these guiding questions to help us understand how to approach this with our Black learners. So how do we explore the emotions associated with the Black experience through our art practices? And then how do we begin to imagine using these practices to design activities for our Black learners to further process these things as well. So I'm gonna move right along to Afrocentric self-awareness. Social awareness. So we describe Afrocentric social awareness as the ability to take in the perspectives of and empathize with others, namely those from the Pan-African diaspora. This includes the capacity to understand social and ethical norms for behavior and to recognize family, school, and community resources and support systems. So what does Afrocentric social awareness look like in praxis? So a good example of this praxis can be explored in the works of many musicians, right? Black learners can explore aspects of their African heritage through music and through dance, which we've already exemplified. And we're gonna exemplify a little bit more in this example as well. Black learners may be asked to draw connections between the emotions that they've experienced as Black folks living in the US and what emotions that they think their African ancestors were trying to convey through the dance moves that, that we know and love and herald. One example that we can point to that was more recent, we can think about the visuals that was produced by Beyonce. Sorry, I'm a Hive member, so I'm always gonna bring her up. When she made Black is King, right? So this is a clear example of how we can actualize social awareness through our art practices. When we look at the video Water, she collaborated with Cameroonian artist Salatio. In the music, you can hear the fusion of different African calls, drums, and different stringed instruments that are regional to the different folks that she collaborated with on each song. And in the video, she does, well, in all of the videos, right, that are associated with the entire visual that is Black is King, she does many traditional African dances. In Water specifically, she does the Bakisimba dance, which originates from Western Uganda, excuse me, and the Ghanaian water dance, which I'm sorry I don't have the official name of. I knew it at one point, but I couldn't recall it when we were going into this, so my apologies for that. But if someone wants to do that research and bring it back to us so we know the official name of that dance to honor our Ghanaian brothers and sisters, just let us know. And other examples that we'll break down now are the different dance styles our young learners can explore when thinking about how to connect with and understand our connections to the diaspora. So we're gonna go into 3 different dance styles. The first one, we're talking about soca. Soca stands for Soul of Calypso. It was invented in the 1970s by Trinidadian artist Lord Shati, shout out to that dude, who claimed that the soul of Calypso was as multicultural as his island's African and East Indian descendants. We set this post-colonial hybrid to music, and Shorty sped up Calypso and gave it an Indian twist. Also to note for soca music, especially Trinidadian soca, they use the steel pan drum in all of their music, so you know soca by the steel pan. Also gonna break down Afro beats, the different dance styles of Afro beat. It's a diverse style originating predominantly in the sub-Saharan Africa. It's an evolution from traditional African styles, and it follows the creation of Afrobeats music. So it's really musically enhanced, right? It was developed as a response to the genre's incredibly energetic and upbeat rhythm. Lastly, we're gonna go over to our Brazilian kin, to samba, which is a musical genre and dance style. Its roots come directly from West Africa, Its roots come directly from West Africa and the African religious traditions, particularly of Angola and the Congo. Once slavery ended, the dances migrated to the favelas and the shanty towns outside of the cities, where freed slaves put together dance troupes for Carnival. And if any of y'all are Caribbean in the space, you know Carnival is, oh, that's awesome. Carnival is like the major event that all Caribbean nations turn to for celebration. for our freedom from slavery in all of the Caribbean nations. So, you know, shout out to Caribbean Massives. And yeah, let's take a look at these different examples of African dance. Why is it not playing? There we go. Awesome. Thank y'all so much for indulging that. So now that we've explored Afrocentric social awareness, gonna go through these guiding questions. Well, go ahead and dance. That's what this is for. So how do we explore Pan-African cultural traditions through our art practices? And then how can we begin to imagine using these practices to design activities for our Black learners? We are more than our dance, and we are more than our music. So there are other ways to center Afrocentric social awareness. These are just a few examples, but I hope this helps you kind of understand and center around what the different ways that Afrocentric social awareness can show up in our art practices. I'm now gonna pass it over to Melissa so she can break down Afrocentric relationship skills. Go ahead, Melissa. Oh, you're muted, Mama.
Oh, okay. Now I'm not muted. Thank you. Perks of first workshop. Okay, so the Afrocentric relationship skills is the ability to build trust and belonging amongst culturally diverse groups of peers. This includes the capacity to have healthy and rewarding conversations about equity, diversity, inclusion, and racism, and to collaboratively develop solutions to drive social change. I think we talked a little bit about how Black Lives Matters has been an influence to how we talk about the importance of the Black voice and creating Black space. And it's really what we're focusing as well, is also creating Black spaces for, you know, our youth to talk about issues that are happening within our communities, like Black male spaces. What is it like being a Black male in America or across the diaspora? Youth groups, to churches and sports teams, women's spaces to discuss colorism. I'm not going to play this clip, but I'll put it in the BK. If you could put it in the chat, that'd be great, just for time. But this clip is really important to me because it's the LGBTQ rights in Ghana. And I don't know if anyone knows anything about Ghana, but thank you, BK. It's a very homophobic nation, and there are people still fighting, LGBTQ folks who are still fighting for their rights to just be with the people that they love. So this is a really great organization. Please check it out and support if you can. They're doing really, really great stuff. So yeah, that's kind of my note on that. But BK, how does this look like in art?
Well, I'll let you know. So when thinking about building relationship skills, one of the best ways that I love to build relationship and building trust among our Black learners, including other cultural groups, is through theater practices. So theater practices can help Black learners share their stories, both personal and cultural, with peers from within their and outside of their race. Through collaboration and ensemble building, theater practices can allow learners to uncover their similarities while also learning to recognize, respect, and communicate across their lines of differences. So to discover the ways that we use this in practice, we're gonna look at a scene from The Colored Museum by George C. Wolfe. And I'm gonna ask for two people this time to help me read a scene from The Colored Museum. Preferably a guy and a woman, but it doesn't have to be.
It could be whoever.
It could be whoever. All right, Het, I got you. One more person who would like to help. Not all at once.
I'll try to read for you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I saw you unmute, but I missed.
My name is Sharon.
Sharon, thank you so much. All right, Sharon and
No
Het. So
problem.
I will read the stage directions for you, and then you both can go ahead and read the script. So this scene from the Color Museum is called The Photo Session. So a very glamorous, gorgeous Black couple wearing the best of everything and perfect smiles. The stage is bathed in color and bright white light. Disco music with the chant, "We're fabulous," plays in the background. As they pose, larger than life images of the music of their perfection are projected onto the museum walls. The music quiets and the images fade away as they begin to speak and pose.
The world, it was becoming too much for us.
Sorry, guys.
No worries.
We couldn't resolve the contradiction of our existence.
And we couldn't resolve yesterday's pain.
So we gave away our life and we now live inside Ebony magazine.
Yes, we live inside a world where everyone is beautiful and wears fabulous clothes.
And no one says anything profound
Or meaningful.
or contradictory.
Because no one talks. Everyone just smiles and shows off their cheekbones.
They adopt a profile prose.
Last month, I was Black and fabulous while holding up a bottle of vodka.
This month, we get to be Black and fabulous together.
They dance and pose, and the "We're fabulous" chant builds and then fades away as they start to speak again.
There are, of course, setbacks.
We have to smile like this. We have to smile like this for a whole month.
And we have no social life.
And no sex.
And at times it feels like we're suffocating, like we're not human anymore.
And everything is rehearsed, including this other kind of pain we're starting to feel.
The kind of pain that comes from feeling no pain at all.
They then speak and pose with a sudden burst of energy.
But one can't have everything.
Can one?
So if the world is becoming too much for you, do like we did.
Give away your life and come be beautiful with us.
We guarantee no contradictions.
Smile, click, smile,
Smile, click,
click, smile,
smile, click.
and no pain.
They adopt a final pose and revolve off as the "We're fabulous" chant plays and fades into the background. Shout out to y'all. Yes, Het. Thank you so much. Y'all did beautiful with that reading. Cold reads. I love it. So as you can see, just from that scene alone, that scene itself will bring up a lot of really, profound conversations around how we build relationship skills together. There are so many things that can come out of that one scene alone. I really love, if you've never read The Color Museum, I would really suggest you read it. Like each scene, like it's all of it is still very relevant to the life that we lead today, right? So, please check that out. So some guiding questions that we can think about when building out Afrocentric relationship skills and practice through our art practices. So how do my art practices help me to build a bridge of understanding between myself and other cultural groups? And how can I begin to imagine using these practices to design an activity for my Black learners? So yeah. So next we're gonna get into Afrocentric responsible decision making. Melissa, take us away, ma'am.
Awesome. Thank you, BK. Afrocentric responsible decision making, the ability to make constructive choices about personal behavior and social interactions based on realistic evaluations of consequences and a consideration for the well-being of oneself and others. This includes the capacity to understand that social standards are different for Black individuals and a rising desire to become a more active member of the Black community, especially in order to promote equitable social rights. I also want to note one thing, which is important to establish, is that not all Black people are going to, need to be an active member in social rights. You know, people are in different stages of their understanding of themselves. Doesn't make them less Black, doesn't make them, you know, less socially just. But this is just kind of, you know, there's just a lot of work within the Black community that needs to be done. So that's just why we added that aspect to it. So just a disclaimer. If you go to the next slide, again, I'm not going to show this clip. BK, if you could put it in the slide, on the chat rather, for folks to watch it. Being Black, one has to consider, and I'm sure we could all list a bunch of reasons and or lots of things that Black people face when, you know, have to consider going outside, like wearing a hoodie or going to the bodega, or you know, just walking down the street. There's many things that we have to consider. And the New York Times, this video does a really good job in exemplifying that. So awesome. But what does that look like in art? How can we use responsible decision-making in art? So BK, you wanna?
Yeah, I was trying to get the link to share it.
I'll probably have to get
that after we after we end the presentation. So sorry about that, y'all. We'll get that to you in just a bit though. Oh no, it's gonna play. Sorry. No, don't play.
It happens.
All right, there we are. So when we're thinking about Afrocentric responsible decision-making in practice, we can really look towards visual art practices, right? Especially those that are collaborative, and most especially those that are collaborating with community, right? Those can be powerful tools to confront social justice issues and social injustices that our communities face. Black learners can work with their peers using photography, creating flyers, or even developing social media campaigns in tandem also with their communities in order to draw awareness to social justice issues that are happening within and around their communities. So today we're going to explore the work of a revolutionary artist, Emory Douglas, and what he did as the Minister of Art and Culture for the Black Panther Party. Also want to note that, you know, a lot of folks have some contention with the Black Panther Party. If you're not Black, you know, there's a lot of propaganda around what they did and what they tried to do in their communities. If we think back to the original title of the group is the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. They were a self-defense organization started to defend their communities, right? So don't fall for the propaganda that you hear about the Black Panther Party. They were all about their community and they were attacked for it. They are the reason right now that we have free lunch in our schools. It was never a thing before they started to do their free breakfast programs. And it wasn't until they started to implement that you know, those were the things that started to be implemented nationwide. Thank you everyone for picking
Everybody knows. Everybody
yeah,
knows. BK, do you want to try going outside the slide and on YouTube? Because I think it's I don't know, is it play good?
Oh yeah,
Let's see.
It's been playing good. It's been playing good.
Okay.
Try it. Or it's gonna make me out to be a liar.
My art is about enlightening and informing people about issues. I was the revolutionary artist of the Black Panther Party. There was segregation here in the Bay Area and all over the country. They would show on the national news the dogs being sicked on the marchers, being sprayed with the hoses, being beaten with the batons. You would see that.
First time I got arrested was 13 years old. I was out there shooting dice with the older guys.
I was just being bad as a youngster. I went to the California Youth Authority. I was accepted to work in the print shop there. And that was really my first introduction to graphic designing. The symbol of the Panther came from Alabama during the Civil Rights Movement. Huey Newton Bobby Seale took up the challenge and started the Black Panther Party. Their discipline, determination to want to fight against the injustice.
Even though some of that may have been a foreign language for me for coming out of the hood and where I was, I didn't come in as intellectual. The initial idea behind the paper was to inform and to enlighten and to educate people about the basic issues in the community and to tell our story from our own perspective. We had an X-Acto blade, some white sheets of paper. We would typeset them on the typewriter with the ball. We couldn't only afford but one color ink, and so it was black plus one other color. The community wasn't then a reading community, but they learned through observation and participation. To get that bold, broad look, I began to mimic woodcuts with markers and pens, playing with shadows and photographs. People would get the gist of the story through just looking at the pictures and maybe reading the captions. We were creating a culture of resistance, a culture of defiance and self-determination. As we evolved, we developed into a full-fledged operation. I became the Minister of Culture. Huey wanted me to draw this pig, stand it up on the two hoofs, put the belt around it, and that became the symbol of those who were abusing their power. Not necessarily everything I do is provocative. A lot of it is based on fact. It may be a provocative interpretation, but it's not a distorted interpretation. Being able to use my art to enlighten and to inform and educate, all that is a part of the legacy. So that's what I continue to do.
Awesome. I really appreciate that our elders are still around to, offer that that